Hey, welcome back. Let's see, back to the big board, I guess, and back to a title called Sisu. Uh, where are we? We're in turn two, and that means it's 5 a.m. twilight. So the first turn is 0400, and it's a night turn, and there's a snowstorm, and there's limited visibility. So there's not a lot going on. And one of the first tactical things I've realized, given how the game system works with fatigue and initiative, is that it may pay big dividends for the Finns to be patient on their approach, such that let's see, and there's some considerations, I guess, now as I'm stating this commentary that I hadn't considered, and we'll get to those in a second. Here's the deal. The Finns start the game with 2 fatigue, and at the point that we get to 4 fatigue, I believe it is, let me just flip over the chart. Yes, we lose a movement point, which means we would lose 2 movement points because of the weather and other bits and pieces going on. There'd be a negative effect on combat, and we would be forced to rest at the end of the turn if we roll a 1 or a 2 on a 1d6, so a 33% chance of that happening. So there's that to keep in mind, and that's 4 fatigue through 7 fatigue. So 4, 5, 6, 7 be 4 turns of rolling and fighting with those detriments to our capabilities, and I'll get to why that's important also in a second. So one of the things I think that might be worthwhile for the Finns is, as the Finns approach onto the map, set up out of range, basically, which I would call anything 2 hexes or more away, or so 3 hexes or more away from the enemy, and be ready at daylight to, which would be, let me just move this stack of counters. There's another twilight turn. So okay, so we could do it in twilight, I guess. So there's 2 twilight hours, 0500, 0600. So on the 0600 turn, if we were to give up initiative, we were to say we're going to rest, we could do the following. We could rest, leave all our units where they are, recover the 2 fatigue that we have, and that would then allow us 3 full turns of no negative effects for the Finns when they're fighting, which I think is going to be important, and we're going to get, just hang in there, we're going to get to that. So move on to the board. The first hour of twilight, we rest, get back to full capability, and then the second hour of twilight, we then would seek to get into combat and get active, right? So that's one consideration. And the reason why I say that is, if we pass initiative back over to the Soviets, it's going to do 2 things for them. It's going to give them a little more flexibility in terms of their ability to do some recovery of fatigue, because they would pick up potentially, you recover 2 fatigue in twilight turns, I believe. So that would take them from a 4 down to a 2, and if they didn't hand back the initiative, it would bring them back to 0. But they're all in bunkers here, so they have an incentive to stay where they are and not really move around too much, except for further south on the map, which they have already started doing. They have abandoned some positions, and they are moving a company plus a support weapon northward to attempt to counter what appears to be where the focus of the attack is going to be, right? So, and I can't really rotate the camera around. Maybe I can. Let's just see if we can do this gracefully. So we've done that right here. We're moving those units in the backfield there, along the spine of the center spine of the island, up that road or trail, and they're going to come and reinforce the northern portion, which is where it would appear that the majority of the attack is occurring, keeping in mind that there is a can I do this? No, I can't. Keeping in mind there is another couple of companies coming on board, and they're allowed to come on anywhere around this section here. So they're probably going to come in over here. If I'm the Soviets, that's what I'm thinking. They're either going to come in here, or they're going to come in here and try and take the VPs that are here. There's 3 VPs here, if you remember from the first video. So good for the Soviets in that they can recover fatigue points, and that may be a detriment to the Finns. But here's the challenge. Because I just went through in turn 2, because I was close enough here, I used Pajari to spot an artillery shot into this hex with the 320 millimeter. We fired once. Actually, we fired 3 times. Fired these 3 offboard artillery pieces at these units. And the way the combat works is it's a unit will fire at you, and depending on the type of combat, type of fire that is being executed, there's no combat factors per se. It's all DRMs. So 1 unit fires, it shoots. If it has units in its hex, it will receive a +1 for each incremental unit that is in its hex supporting it. If I use 3 movement points for the combat, I'll receive a +1. So that would say, let's call that +3, right? On a 2d6, the defender is going to receive, now depending on which item you believe, whether you believe the bunker item, or the bunker counter, or the chart, it's either a -1 or a -2 for direct fire. There appears to be an error on either the counter or the chart for this, and so that's annoying. So I'm using -1 because that seems reasonable based on how these DRMs are working out. And then there are other DRMs that come into play, whether it's reaction fire or not. That's a negative. Let's see. If units are suppressed, close, if the target is in open terrain, you're going to receive a benefit if you're shooting at it. So basically everything, except for where the Finns are on the open ice, is closed terrain. So there's no terrain effects really whatsoever. Woods and wooden village buildings and all the rest of it are pretty much treated the same. Shooting up a steeper slope or a cliff or whatever, it has no impact on fire either. And you may receive a benefit if the top unit is an MG, an AA, or an AT unit. There's some range things that come to bear. So these numbers on the units are not really, they're not combat factors, they're ranges. So this AA unit can fire a range of 5. If you can see that off to the side here, and I've got a machine gun unit here, there's a range of 3. So a little bit different. And so you have 1 unit firing. We'll look at the table, and if I'm doing a standard 2d6 roll, I've got to roll 7 or better to get a suppression, and a 7 or 8 will get me a suppression. A 9, 10, or 11, let me show you. A 9, 10, or 11 will give me a S1, and we'll talk about that in a second. Sorry, a 9 or a 10 will give me an S1, and an 11 will give me an S2, and a 12 will get me a kill, right, on that unit in that hex. Now, if I receive an S1 result, well, actually, if I receive any result, here's what happens. I roll the D6, and if the number is higher than the middle number, which is their cohesion or morale number, if it's higher than that number, I am suppressed. And they're actually, so then you just flip the marker, you flip the unit over to its reverse side. If it receives another suppression, it dies. And these units will come back during night turns anyway. So it's not like they're killed, it's kind of like they rally up. So it's kind of odd from that perspective also. But anyway, so that's how you would reduce or kill these units. So the idea was that I was firing artillery to try and suppress these guys, and then take another, then move, and then move into the hex and do a close combat, right? So already the net of all this is there's a whole bunch of pluses and minuses. So I'm looking at when I did a direct fire, I don't know which stack fired now, maybe it was this one. I used 3 MP, so I got a +1 DRM. The unit was in a bunker, so that negated the +1. I had 1 incremental unit in the stack, so that got it a +1, but it was twilight, so that took away a +1. So after looking all that up, no DRMs, I rolled a 5, no effect. So okay, so that's when then I did the 3 artillery shots. They all failed. I rolled a 2 and a 5, a 5, and there was no DRMs, and then I had one other shot. I don't know what the result was. I can't remember. It was a 4 or something. So it's going to be very difficult to move or dislodge or disrupt, suppress units already. I'm seeing that. So I think, and the trick here is that, you know, at the end of every turn, I accrue a fatigue point, and once I hit that 4, now I'm picking up another DRM, so that's gonna make it even harder to kill. So you want to be as fresh as you can the first 3 or 4 turns, I believe, and then try and sweep these guys. And I think I'm going to be fairly aggressive with the attacking. I think where the rubber is going to meet the road is going to be in the close combat, because that's number of units as a ratio. So if I have 3 units here, I believe that's how that works. Let me just double check that. Oh, not number of units, number of pips. So 3, 6, 9 pips versus 2 pips. I'm going to get a 4 to 1 on that. And we're going to look at, this goes up to 1, it goes up to 4 to 1. So I'll get a +3 on the DRM. I would flip over to that same chart I showed you and go to the close combat results, which have combat results for both sides in that. So that can end up being pretty nasty. You can actually be eliminated in the results 2 out of 12 times and suffer suppressions as well. So there you have it. We're going to keep at it, and we'll see how this all plays out. I'll be keen to see what happens when I get these other reinforcements here on the map. That's going to make moving and adjustments a little more difficult for the Soviets, and we'll kind of go forward from there. All the best.